Being growth ready means ready to execute your next step. And it might be a big one, it might be an uncomfortable one, it might be one that requires a great deal of stress, and it's what I call a growing edge.
Hello there, it's me, Steve Mellor, and welcome in to GrowthReady, the podcast that allows high performers to reveal the reality behind what it means to ready yourself for growth, the personal and professional challenges along the growth journey, while also allowing the high performance executive coach in me to satisfy his curiosity toward what drives optimal performance. On this episode, we welcome Dr. Leslie Gordon, an applied linguistic expert and communication coach who's here to help us shift from the familiar to the unfamiliar.
We're comfortable with something even though it might not be working, it's familiar, right? It's what's unfamiliar that's scary, but looking over the edge and then absolutely stepping over the edge is where you step into something.
Leslie's focus on the ways our mind, body, and voice interact helps us understand not only the importance of this work, but that for any growth work to be useful, we must identify a reason to ready ourselves to shift from awareness into action. Hey guys, as we get started here with the episode, I want to just take 1 minute of your time to make a request for you to subscribe and rate the show. For our show to be easily discovered by other potential listeners, we need our current listeners, that's you, to take the time to not only subscribe, but to also rate the show. Whether you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, whatever platform of choice, there are typically ways to be rating the show. So go ahead and click something like that 5th star and be sure to take that additional time to leave a comment or two about why it is you enjoy listening to the Growth Ready podcast. Your efforts on this will allow our show to be more discoverable, which means we're going to find more listeners and continue to have that significant impact on the community of human performance and personal development that I know you are all benefiting from by being listeners to this show. Please go ahead, take the time, subscribe, rate the show today. Hey, and while you're at it, why don't you share it with a few people as well? I appreciate you guys. Let's get to the interview. Hello there, and welcome into the most recent installment of the Growth Ready podcast. I am so delighted to be welcoming someone today who, as I sometimes get to do, I met at a conference about 1.5 years ago now, I want to say, maybe even 2 years.
I think so.
And yeah, and we now are here, having kept in touch and learned more about one another's worlds. And Leslie Gordon, I get to welcome you into the Growth Ready podcast today. And before we go any further, I get to ask you what I get to ask everybody when we get started here on the show, and that is, what does it mean to you to be growth ready?
Thank you, Steve. I'm thrilled to be here. I've been looking forward to this a lot. Good to see you again. To me, being growth ready means ready to execute your next step. And it might be a big one, it might be an uncomfortable one, it might be one that requires a great deal of stress, and it's what I call a growing edge. And so being ready to execute on that growing edge.
Growing edge. We have a new term, folks. I always love a new term.
Love to bring new terms.
The idea of the edge, immediately I just feel this, like I've got my hair's moved up a little bit on me. I don't know what's happening right now. Like I feel like there's this unknown component, right? Like there's this whole. So walk us through, when you say a term like the growing edge, the growth edge, what is it you're trying to help us understand with that kind of term?
I have adopted that from the growth mindset literature, and it's the mindset that allows you to be able to take that extra step or that step outside. It's a term that I actually like to use in place of the word weakness. And so one thing that I notice with the people that I work with in the rooms where I speak is that there are a lot of people who have this binary idea of their speaking skill and their voice, good, bad, strong, weak. So when the word weak comes along, I immediately put up a hand and say, nope, first thing we're going to replace that word with the term growing edge, because we all have edges that grow all of the time. And we're pushing at those boundaries until we find one that deserves really pushing. And when we can be at the edge and be ready to execute that next thing, that is, for me, where growth happens.
The immediate word that comes to mind as you're talking through this, Leslie, is this idea of just awareness, this heightening people's awareness. And to
yes,
again, I immediately am drawn just to my background in sport, and I think of some of the athletes we've had on here as well. That there is this necessity that athletes have sometimes to sort of say, this isn't something I do well, and I need to figure out a way to do it. They lean in straight away. They just go that yes, we can call it a weakness all you want, coach, or whatever it might be, but I'm not going to accept it as a weakness. I'm aware that it's a component of my game that I must improve, so I'm going to lean in. And this idea of the edge, what I love about it is it's you're presenting it in a way that it's welcoming. You're encouraging us, go to the edge. Don't resist it.
Go there.
Go there. So walk me through some of the, I guess, the psychology and even some of the just human behavioral components that come with getting someone to lean in now that they're becoming aware of that edge.
Well, everyone will know, your listeners will know that we all like to stick to what's familiar. Right? We are creatures of habit. We're comfortable with something, even though it might not be working, it's familiar, right? It's what's unfamiliar that's scary. But looking over the edge and then absolutely stepping over the edge is where you step into something. Well, I probably shouldn't say step into something. That has a bad connotation, but where you enter a new world of challenge and growth. And you mentioned athletes. I love working with athletes, and especially athletes growing their voices, because they get that there is a stretch zone, that there is a place, that there's one more gear, there's one more thing to be stretched, and they can reach in and they can find it. The translation is, for so many people that I work with, is growing the vocal muscle. Right? Because it's one you don't think about. It's always there for your use. You've always used it. Why change it? As long as you can say a sentence. But we know that's true for those who don't have that confidence in their voice and who need to grow that edge. And so it's about looking at the vocal mechanism, your expression, your mindset around your speaking. In certain circles, I work with accent clients. It's about thinking of growing and expanding the capability rather than cutting out, substituting, a wholesale change. It's always about expansion. So we go right back to that growing edge. Where can I expand the edge to put me in a new territory and do a new thing?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought in so early the area that you specialize, that you have your expertise in, because I think it's going to allow us to get some very specific examples. But one thing I want to make sure we do consistently throughout this, because I know it's relevant across so many areas, is that we pull out too. We also come out and just, because you've already alluded to a term like confidence. And when we think about people's voice and willingness to speak up, and a huge part of your work is getting folks comfortable, familiar, as you put it, with this idea of, I have a thought, I have an insight, and I've yet to build the confidence to share it. Something as simple as that. And I say that, and I have no doubt everyone at home is thinking, "Yep, been there, been in that meeting." I've had that client opportunity, and oh gosh, I wish I'd said that, but I didn't have the courage to say it, whatever it might be. And so let's start specific to the speaking side of this. When you think about what brings people to you, what are some of those consistent elements that makes a person say, as you just put it, knowing that I don't have the confidence to, but getting to a point where I'm willing to expand, I'm willing to lean in, I'm willing, as you put it, walk to that edge. What are some of the consistent elements that you're noticing in people when they come to you in that moment?
Very consistently, I see the high-performing individual, very often highly placed in their organization or their endeavor, even if it's a creative space, not so much a workspace. that they have reached a point where they have amassed the expertise. They know it, whatever it is, better than anyone else in the room. And everyone knows they know it, but they haven't grown the voice to reflect the expertise. And very, very often it's because, and again, this is related to the high performer. If we're high performers, we're also highly self-evaluative. And we are always running the reel in the head of checking ourselves. Was that right? Was that good? Again, back to that binary opposition, right? How am I being heard? Did that land? And the noise in your head really prevents you from fully stepping into your voice. And so I work over and over again with people who they've reached a point that the pain around not fully using their voice is an obstacle. They're no longer executing, or not yet executing to their fullest. And in terms of feelings, I would call it's sort of a blister on their identity. It's just constantly a pain point. And they have reached finally the recognition that unless they grow that edge, that they will sit in misery, even if they progress, that it will be this heavy thing that they continue to carry with them. So they're ready to make a change and grow that edge.
Yeah, so much I want to explore in that response. I definitely want to go to the high performer and the high evaluator within that high performer. But before we go there, the disconnect between a person's expertise and the ability to maybe showcase, present, however you want to put it. Again, yes, we can look at this specific to a person finding their voice, but gosh, I mean, who doesn't relate to that disconnect in any capacity? It's like there's people listening who think, I know I have the expertise, Leslie, but for whatever reason, the world isn't as aware as I am of my expertise. Is it my voice? Is it something else? Like what? But to that point, I think what you're helping us understand here is that the evaluative high performer, when we start there with the willingness to evaluate, we're not necessarily trying to solve. And that's what I love about what you're saying, is that you're not encouraging us to solve. You're simply encouraging us to evaluate and kind of lean in at the same time.
Well, I guess I might say, I want you to evaluate your evaluation and ask yourself, determine if it's useful. Because there are times where that self-evaluation can identify habits that aren't serving you. It allows you to look at yourself from the outside, although that is very difficult. We often need someone else, that trusted person, to help us see what we're not seeing or hear what we're not hearing. So I think it's not that I want to squash self-evaluation or discourage anyone from doing it, because it goes hand in hand with awareness, and that's so essential. But I guess knowing the distinction between what is useful evaluation and what is too much, what becomes, when self-evaluation becomes the obstacle and not the impetus.
Yeah,
you laughed at that. That must really ring a bell.
There's so many client conversations are coming flying back here because of how we evaluate the evaluation. I mean, I think that is such a key insight, because when we think about just growth, before we even think about the readiness towards the growth, are we okay being the ones evaluating where we are? Should we be left to our own device to evaluate? Does it, like you said, when does it go from healthy curiosity to self-criticism to whatever? Like there's so many, and again, we're all relating to this idea, because this is one of those things we can be evaluate while we can multitask self-evaluation, right? We could be doing 100%. It on the go, in the grocery store, driving the car, whatever it is. And that's where what I'm detecting here is that it's when we're not present with the evaluation, we're not intentional with the evaluation, that's when we can get ourselves in trouble.
Presence and intention are two of my key I'll say my key terms in the work I do and when I speak on this. But they're the skills that I want anyone to build, because and I would maybe reverse the order. Intention builds presence. Intention builds, maybe awareness builds intention, builds presence. Right? And, without all of those, that's when the mind is allowed to do its crazy thing, and that rapid talking, and it going back again to the term I used before, habits, right? That self-evaluative self-talk reel in the brain becomes the default until you can be aware of what it's doing and why it's doing it, which is something you and I haven't talked about yet, but why it's doing it, how to stop it or redirect it in a way that's more productive, and then step forward over that growth edge.
Yeah. So let's go right there. Let's go to the why we're doing it, because I think that's going to help people stop doing it. So let's go to the why.
Perhaps. I think in most cases, and again, I work with so many high performers that it tends to be their pain point and their origin is that, well, let me take a step back. Yeah. We all have internal mechanisms that help us move towards safety, away from danger towards safety. The voice in the head is one of those mechanisms. So while it sounds like self-criticism, and while and it's because we've built that relationship with it that it's self-criticism, right? It actually comes from a place that's a much nicer place. It wants to protect you. And so in its purest form, it's a voice telling you, don't speak up, you'll be embarrassed. Let's just save yourself that misery. Don't speak up, you might expose that you're not quite ready yet. Wait a little longer, speak in the next meeting, or whatever it is. So it's born in safety. But then over time, you develop this relationship with it where it has so much power over you that it starts to tune up and you get quiet, right? So we have to evaluate the purpose of the voice and how you can redesign your relationship with the voice. Recognize it, know what it's doing, tell it to be quiet for a day. One of my favorite tips is to give your voice a name. Name it to tame it, right? Yeah. I call my voice Lucille because it's an L name like mine, but it also just has that feeling of a cranky, critical aunt. So apologies to the Lucille's out there. That are listening. And so I just tell Lucille just to park it for a little bit, that her services are not needed. And then that helps me take control of that brain activity and focus it where I need to focus it, which is often, and we may go there later in this conversation, into my body resources for growing presence, growing calm, growing a voice that matches that state or reflects that state.
Yeah, I'm excited to go there with you here a little later on, but for now, the idea of redesigning the relationship with this voice, putting a name to the voice. I'm someone I'm I say a graduate of, but maybe I don't ever actually graduate from it, of therapy of most of the last decade of my life, and a lot of that work has been the voice inside of my head, and understanding. I've yet to give him a name. I'm definitely going to work on that today, but at the same time, it for me, and I'm curious as to how this comes up in your work. For me, it's the ability to not simply let the voice talk and lead and drive. It's finding the skill set to listen to the voice and somehow create that relationship, like you said, because it almost, at first people hear that and you go, so am I just talking to myself now? Like, what am I doing? I'm like, yeah, you are.
You are. Yeah, you always are. Yes.
Yeah. So tell us more about that. Tell us more about that.
It's so interesting because it's just now hitting me, but I would compare it to the relationship you build with your AI. It gets to know you. And then, as we all notice, it starts to tell you things, great ideas. Wow, where did it come up with that? It's really listening to me. It's really paying attention. But if you're a smart user, you know that you still have to have control of that conversation. You have to read what it's giving you. You have to think about it. And then back to evaluation, check in. Is this the message I want to be hearing right now? If not, I'm going to go back into AI. I have a name for her too. She's Kathy, Chatty Kathy. I'll go in and tell Kathy, no, that's not where we're going with this. I need you to go in a different direction. And it's much the same with your voice. Don't let it just, as you say, don't let it lead you. Have a conversation with it, and you're in control of the conversation.
Yeah, and you've said the word control now a couple times, and that
High
there is
performers
that
love control.
exactly. And
Yeah.
and if we know we love control, if we know we love that, then why is it we get in our own way by allowing things to operate within ourselves that clearly show a lack thereof?
Well,
That for me is fascinating. Always has been. It's like because we literally allow a lack of control to happen, even though as a high performer, like all I want is that. I just want the control.
so help me build this in the moment, Steve, because I think you've got some insight on this. But we want control, I believe, because we want to avoid what is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
What's uncomfortable might be what's unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
So we stick to what we know, we stick to what's safe. And sometimes what we know and what is safe is the habit or the conversation
Mm-hmm.
or the things that have not been serving us for some time. But because they're familiar and maybe safe and don't require us to push that edge, we fall back into them.
Yeah.
So the challenge becomes recognizing what we're hearing, deciding if it's true and useful. That's another one of my favorite words, useful.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, redirecting that conversation in the direction of that growing edge so that maybe we're not comfortable for a time, but we reestablish control, or what we define as control. I don't know. Pick it apart.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
just
no, but
putting that
I love
together
that the
right now.
word. I love that. I love that we're doing this. Like, so for me, that word useful really resonates with me because the word useful means it requires direction. It has to have a cause. We have to say to ourselves, "Hey, listen, I'm doing this for a reason."
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's work for the sake of work. It's a chore,
Mm-hmm.
if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly now you go, well, if I create that, and you started us down this path at the beginning of this high level executive, whoever it is, who knows they have the expertise, but for whatever reason they don't have the confidence to speak up. At some point, they have to decide that the speaking up matters. It has to
Mm-hmm.
matter enough so that this work becomes useful, so that the actual rebuilding of the relationship with oneself internally is worthwhile work.
Yes. And I would even say, yes, with 1000% to the internal work, but the cause you mentioned is outside of you
Mm-hmm.
with others who need to hear the message you have to give so that you can serve them in whatever role, whatever moment, whatever purpose that is. Because what is missing for, again, the high performer who lacks the voice that reflects their expertise, they're not landing it. And it's a lack of connection.
Mm.
Your voice is betraying something, telling a different story than the one you know you can tell. And you're failing to make that connection with the intended recipient.
Yeah.
And so the cause is really outside of you. It's someone else. And I have found over and over again in myself and all of those I help and those I speak to is that it's a major mind shift when you think about the function of the voice being someone else, other focused. It's effort, but it's focused on someone else. And you can't connect and critique at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain can't do that. It's not wired that way. So the quickest way to shut off the voice is to be thinking about someone else and how they're benefiting from what you have to say. And, I love to give the fun example. If you have just found the greatest buy ever on Amazon, the best deal on the most wonderful life hack, you're going to tell someone about it, right? And you don't care
Right.
what they think because you think you're helping that person.
Mm-hmm.
So when we ground our voice in service to others, it's a major mind shift.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest, so much good there. The biggest piece that you just said, which I think is so important, is that the work that we do around connection and criticism, they can't coexist. They can't happen at the same time.
It's so true.
And because I want to be clear, I think as high performers, is those that are aspiring to optimize our growth journey, we need to make room for criticism. We need to make that's okay. It's par for the course on many days. But if you think that you're going to be in the right headspace in the midst of that criticism to somehow connect to the optimal path, the optimal course, the optimal self, you're kidding yourself. Like honor both of those bits of work. Like put that work over here and put that work over there. Separate the two, because I think where you're really taking us now is towards the person that you're becoming, and really anchoring enough in that, valuing that enough. Because without that value, to go back now to the idea of the use of the work, the usefulness, there's that's what I've gotten to know over decades of working with high performers. If it can't make it matter, they cannot bring their best self to the surface to do the work that matters.
Value and meaning. And I can't help but reflect back to my origin, my professional, in a lot of ways, my personal origin around navigating other languages, because you don't do it successfully and it's not fun until you realize that there's meaning that you're making. You're not just rotely repeating words. You're not just memorizing for the sake of creating a list of things you can now say. When you can create meaning with another human being, or with a purpose, or with an effort, right, then suddenly it matters, like you say. And there's so much about the work that I used to do there that still applies to the work I do now. It's constructing meaning in spaces where you are the expert and someone can be served by what you have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's move to the body now. Let's move to the physical side, because I think this is a really nice segue for that. Because I mean, I don't want to speak too much into this before I just pass it over to you, but the one thing I'm always so curious about with everyone I work with is the physical response when we get the engagement piece right, when we're aligned with what it is we're trying to do. So please take us there now. Like, help us better understand the physical response, the body's response to this type of work.
Well, the body is in constant response to stimuli on a level that we don't even realize most of the time. You'll know this. We carry tensions, low-grade activations in parts of the body, and sometimes body work is necessary to free you up so you can move better. The same is true for speaking and for using your voice. The voice and your speech live in the body. They're born in the body. Your breath is essential for speaking. Quite literally, without your breath, you cannot make sound. And so if you think about this mechanism of speech and voice together, right now we'll just call them the same thing. They're working together, but they're housed in your body. So a body that is in response to something, in what I'll call chaos. It's in chaos because of nerves, because of fear, because of self-criticism that's constant, because of work stressors, because of anything else, is naturally going to affect the voice. It will be tight. It will be tense. It will be quick. It will be all the things that you don't really want it to be, and maybe you don't know it is. But again, that becomes habit, because the body has its habit. It forms the habit in your voice. And sometimes that is the reason that message is not landing. You have a way about your voice that's at odds with the message that you're sharing, with what you actually want to say and how you want to connect with the person. And because we don't see it in ourselves or hear it in ourselves, it takes someone else to say, I know you're trying to come across as confident and calming and inspiring, but your voice is making me nervous. There's an urgency there that is at odds with what you're trying to say. That's just one example.
Yeah.
But it takes someone to help you hear that. And then that awareness, that growing awareness of the body voice connection. Honestly, the body, mind, and voice, they all work together all of the time. Because your mind influences the state of your body, and your body influences your voice, and then it's a Venn diagram. It's beautiful. But when you grow that awareness of what's happening in your body, and how by opening the channel, opening the vessel, you can create a physical state where your voice can expand and grow and come through in a way that's warm, approachable, or whatever you want it to be. You have more control when you're open and easy, not when you're pushing and effortful.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way you describe it as creating the space speaks volumes to that, just
Make the space.
making the space, just to understand that if we're doing this work and evoking more and more awareness to the way the body, the mind, the voice are all working hand in hand. And in my mind as well, as I hear you explain that, I go, the way in which each of them at times is getting in one another's way. Like, I think that's just like, that was the visual.
It's like a team, right? Someone's getting in the way.
Right. And like, that was like, as you were talking through that, I was just like, that's what I'm hearing. And that's where it's resonating. I'm like, we maybe all have great intentions, but we're not in alignment with one another's intentions. And for whatever reason, we're getting in one another's way. I'm curious, even when I say that, I saw you immediately react. Like, what does that look like in real time? Like, help people maybe put up a mirror right now, because they may not even know they're doing it. You know what I'm saying? So
I had I'm thinking of a conversation I had yesterday with a client who's quickly becoming one of my favorites, because she's just so open to growing this edge. In fact, she loves that term, growing edge. And she's there in terms of her position and her expertise. She is at that rung of the ladder. She's not yet seeing herself in that position. So her vocal habits, her expressive habits are still telling the story of the person who's still trying to get there. And so one of the things that she came to me saying that she would often find herself doing is fighting for spot in the conversation and trying to jump in and being choppy and feeling nervous and all of these things going together. The mind is saying, you have to find a place. You need to speak up. They need to hear you. The body gets nervous because it knows it has to do a thing, and it's all reflected in the voice. So yesterday we had a great conversation around making space, actually. And she came in the conversation, she used the term filling the space. And we've all heard that term when we talk about presence, right? You want to walk in the room and fill the space. And I was helping her realize that sometimes filling the space means listening and being present and choosing the useful time to speak rather than fighting your way in every chance you get, because it presents you completely differently. And you become in that room the one who is the wise listener, the one who makes the sound contribution at the right time. And you feel better. And she even said, I actually did that after a meeting recently. And I walked out of there for the first time forever feeling that went well. And I'm not beating myself up. So sometimes making space or creating space is creating a place where there is no urgency and where there is no chaos. Back to what I was saying about the voice coming from an open and free place. Sometimes you just need to be.
Yeah. And to tie it back to the idea of familiar versus unfamiliar, like straight away my mind just goes to that. It's the space is unfamiliar to all of us. Like, and for us to now say, I'm going to get familiar with a new way of holding the space, filling the space, however you want to put it. And it may mean doing less, at least at the surface, right? Because listening is not doing less, but it's
not.
But the physical, this is the beauty now of what we're talking about, the physical need to feel as though we are filling that space when listening, arguably the least observational physical thing that you can see a person doing, could be the very way that we in fact fill that space.
I mean, we can all think of examples of people who we admire because they hold space in a certain way. It's not urgent. It's not frantic. It gives you a sense of calm just to be in the room with them. But when they speak, they're going to say something that you wish you could write down, right? Because it's so sound, because they've been listening.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I love it. And I think that I have to touch on this because it was one of the first things you said. And I think we're at that point now, having covered as much as we've covered for us to be able to talk about this directly, is that when you opened up with the growth edge, something you said was that this is your way of almost building upon the growth mindset. It's just, and this is a very safe space for us to have this conversation, mainly because for me, so much of my work and what I believe so much of the conversations that come on this show, what it does is it emphasizes that growth mindset alone is not enough.
Mm.
And so I really want to lean into that now with you. This idea of when you think about all this, this is work. Like Leslie, you are outlining work for us today, which this, again, very safe place to do that. But when I think about this idea of saying growth mindset isn't quite enough and we need to start leaning more into something, to use your term, this growth edge, why is that? Like, why is growth mindset not enough? And why is it that this work that you're now clearly helping us understand the gravity to which we might be having to take on, why is it that this work needs to be done for us to separate and go past what this idea of the growth mindset is?
Because action is necessary. You have to take action to create any new habit. It's about rewiring those circuits in the brain, doing a thing a new way. And as you know, from being an athlete, movement creates a pattern, creates a response in the brain, and we create new patterns in other areas of our lives through movement. So that's particularly important for speaking. It's one thing to say, to have someone tell you do X, Y, and Z to be a better speaker. But if you're not doing it, trying it, hearing it, feeling that doesn't feel right at first, repeating it until it does, until you see someone look at you differently, until you know that message lands, whatever it is, then you don't grow that new muscle. Right? So you actually have to do the thing. This is, back to confidence. I feel that if I often hear people counsel other people on speaking and they'll say, just be confident, you'll be fine. What does it mean to be confident? It's not a jacket you put on. You have to build the confidence muscle through action, through repetition, through seeing the cause and effect of that new action. And again, building that new muscle and rewiring things. And so I think that's why you have to go to the edge, to the place where maybe you don't have a choice anymore. You've gotten to the edge. You're about to take a step off. What are you going to do? And then it's through the doing that you learn and that you survive it. No one died. You did better than you think. And then that self-evaluation at this point is useful because you can say, okay, I did a thing and I like the outcome. I'll try that again. That's why I think we have to take action.
There's certain moments in conversations where I get the complete clarity that this is why I brought the person on the show. And you just brought it there because it's so important, Leslie, and you absolutely nailed that response into. And again, I know this isn't about being right and wrong, but it's more about just understanding that from the point of what we are trying to do with this show is that action is necessary. And to the example that you gave there of the passive the passive encouragement of people just to simply say, yeah, just be more confident. And it's just like, it's like when people come to me sometimes and they go, I want to grow. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Like it's wonderful that you want to grow. I'm so excited for you that you want to grow, but that means absolutely nothing. I'm so sorry to tell you that, but it does. And this is where the work begins though. That's exciting. It's exciting that we're going to define what it means to grow, etc. But for me, this also brings back to the danger versus the safety piece that you presented earlier, is that when we just say, okay, I got to be more confident, you're not really doing anything. You're just telling yourself you need to be more confident, and you're allowing yourself to stay in a very comfortable, safe place by doing that. The danger is asking a question like, how might I become confident? Like
back to the curiosity point that you raised earlier. Curiosity drives a lot of new action rather than asking, will I do this right? Will I do this well? Asking the question, what would happen if? Let me see what happens when. And it's a way of pushing yourself, or if you're helping someone through this, pushing them over that edge to see what happens. A thing I love to do with individuals or in a room of people is to give them my favorite technique, which is, I call it a freebie. And I'll have them do a thing. And I'll always say, oh, this one's a freebie. Feel free to really stink it up.
Right.
In fact, do your worst. Let me show you. Let me see what you got.
Yeah.
And it's that, I'm going to go out without a net, but Leslie's got me, or this room has got me, or something. And it's a way of experimenting in a low stakes way and getting a feel, right?
Yeah.
And then learning that, oh, as a matter of fact, I did not die and no one's criticizing me, so maybe I'll try it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you said, creating that safe space, right?
Yeah, and there's two parts there that I think are so important for us to understand is the safe space communal component of this type of work and the necessity to not do it alone. I think that's huge. And then the other part too of just finding that level of comfort of doing it badly first and just removing, like, again, so much of what we are encouraging on this show is to consider the high stakes, is to go towards the high stakes. People listen to this show specifically to get more comfortable with what that journey may look like. But to get to high stakes, why not just start at low stakes? You create those low stakes to begin with and give yourself a freebie. I love how you put it. And there's so many other ways that you can, I may use a different word, but I can just say crappy first draft for the sake of any children listening. But for me, like that's how we have to think to go from what some would probably consider more of a growth mindset to what you've presented here in this concept of the growth edge, is that if we can't find that first step, then we're just going to stay safe. We're going to stay in that growth mindset. We're going to say, well, I'm definitely open to it. I'm definitely, that definitely seems like something that I would do. Yep, for sure. It's like, but we're not committing to anything by saying that. And we need to get into that more dangerous space, but maybe complete, unrestricted danger is not where we want to go first. We just want to go somewhere that's a little less familiar. I think that's a nice place to start.
And that is actually some of I think the most useful advice that I give when I'm speaking to team leaders, managers, organizers, wherever they are, and they're thinking about growing the skills of their people and their teams, is to consider those small opportunities where they might put them in a role where they need to try some new skills. Don't assume that because they go and take the workshop that they're ready, that they'll come back with a perfectly polished presentation style that lands in the room every time. That's way too big of stakes to ask them to do, to expect them to do. Give them little moments. Let them introduce someone at a meeting. Let them wrap up a meeting, right? Just little steps at a time to grow that edge and to help them realize that they can continue to build. And then they'll be ready to follow on the next recommendation to continue to grow.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I see is that gap. We're giving people a tool and then saying, now go crush it.
Yeah.
With, just one exposure. And that's not enough.
It's not enough. It's not enough. And it's one of my favorite things about being a parent is I get reminded of that same journey as my kids learn new skills in sports and things like that. And then I bring that next day into the executive suite and I'm like, you guys are trying to go from learning how to hit a baseball to taking a pitch from a Major League Baseball pitcher. What are you doing? Like
from crawling to running. We gotta walk in there somewhere. We gotta fall.
Right.
We gotta crawl. We gotta walk.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. The last thing I want to ask you here, Leslie, because I think this is you're such a it's what I've really enjoyed about following your work in the last couple of years I've known you. Like, you are such an advocate for community. You've chaired a local chapter there with what I think both of us would agree is the greatest speaking organization on planet Earth, that is the National Speakers Association. Not that we're both, advocates of that, whatever. But anyway, the point being is that you practice what you preach in terms of not simply leaning into an individual's voice and all the work that you've obviously presented us here today, but the importance of doing it with others. And so I would just love for you to impart some insight here for those listeners that might be saying, I hear it all, but the part that I'm probably most worried about doing is this around anybody else, is the idea that I'm going to work on a piece of myself, even if it's not speaking and that something else is coming to mind through this conversation. What is it that community, what is it that the team part of this does for a person?
Gosh, I could take this in so many directions.
We have a whole nother 45 minutes. Let's go.
Okay, great. So from a learning standpoint, learning in community has been shown through tons of research, educational research, psychological research, social, you name it, to have benefits that they compound on themselves. We learn better, we learn faster, we take it to different situations. We can generalize that learning to other situations when that learning is done in community. In my former life, when I was in the academic space, I ran a lot of cohort-based programs. And over and over again, it's that bonding, it's the getting through it with someone else that helps you realize you can do a thing. It's what, this will sound like I'm contradicting what I said earlier, but that safety is important. The safety of the group, because it's there that you realize you can step out and try a thing, and that the room has got your back.
Yeah.
Because especially when it comes to speaking, everyone's afraid of it. So you stand up and you're not in front of a room of critics. You're in front of a room of people thinking, oh, I'm with you. I know you're nervous. I'm going to smile at you because I want you to do well. And I'm going to cheer really hard for you when you do it. And that's why I love working with groups even more than individuals, really, because they learn as much from each other as they do from me. And that's the way it should be. And that's why any significant learning is so much better in a group. If you're in a leadership program, and I've done that too, I've been in them, I've led them so from both sides, I know it. Educational settings, professional development, sports, what have you. We need that. We need others to reflect back to us that we are indeed growing. There's a famous speaker, Les Brown, who, one of his sayings that I just love, I use all the time, is you can't read the label from inside the jar. You got to have someone else to help you read that label. And that's what happens in community. And I strongly, strongly believe in it.
I love it. What a wonderful insight, courtesy of the speaking legend that is Les Brown. But
He has so many good ones.
So many, right? We could do a whole podcast on just quotes from Les Brown alone. But I'm so glad that I asked that question, because I think it is such a great way to bring this conversation to a close. Is that in this day and age, especially the appeal of just locking yourself away and doing work alone. In a way, it's never been easier to do that because of what we have access to. But that point of just the ability for people to reflect with you, and I love what you said about creating that bond with others, to do what is hard, to do what is difficult, to be an amateur, to be a novice around fellow amateurs and those that are novices as well. Like that there's a power in that. There's a support system in that that's going to help you get past what is initially very unfamiliar, very dangerous territory, and feel safe and get that familiarity. And I just adore this entire conversation. I'm so thankful that we've been able to do this and have you on. But for me, Leslie, I want to make sure that anybody who's listened to this conversation and says, please, how do I learn more about this lady? I would love for you to let us know the best way for us to do that.
Absolutely. Well, it's been such a joy, Steve. Honestly, I've had a blast here. My website is lesliegordonspeech.com, and I'm on LinkedIn pretty regularly, Leslie Gordon, PhD. And I have a Facebook page and Instagram as well, also Leslie Gordon Speech, but I tend to appear most on LinkedIn or through things I put on my site, so you can find me either way there.
Love it. All that information will be in our show notes. Again, Leslie, I hope to see you at a NSA function at some point.
I hope so.
Pretty soon. But in the meantime, thank you so much for the generosity of all these insights. And
thank you,
just
Steve.
Best of luck.
I appreciate you. See you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Growth Ready. If you liked what you heard and are feeling ready to grow, be sure to leave a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share the episode with someone you know is ready to fuel their growth journey today. We love our community, so don't hesitate to reach out to us at podcast@growthready.com. And until next time, we are Growth Ready, and you will be too.